So here we are, it's May 2nd, and we are at the Forest Monastery discussing Weti Muni's book, The Buddha's Teaching and the Ambiguity of Existence. And we're looking at Chapter 3, Immediate and Reflective Experience.
Reflexive.
Yeah, that's the whole point of this chapter. The difference between reflective and reflexive experience or consciousness. He begins, the faculty of reflection, with an X, self-observation, is inherent in the structure of our experience. This faculty can be cultured and developed, and though it is not easy, it must be developed to make progress toward enlightenment. So in other words, if you're not observing yourself, separating yourself from yourself, and looking at yourself, your experience especially, as an object, then there's no question of any kind of enlightenment or self-realization. Then he goes on to say, reflexion, with an X, should be distinguished from reflection. Reflection is conceptual. It deals with concepts and ideas of things that are not at hand. He's read Heidegger. It is abstract thinking. Reflection is closely related to memory. It is remote from, and in fact separate in time from, the existence of the thing being thought about. So we're remembering something that happened in the past, and then we're thinking and analyzing it. Error is easily possible in reflection, because concepts are built up from previous individual experiences, such as past observations, discussions, reading, etc. Thus, it is all too easy for the conceptual thinker to build up misleading and erroneous ideas about his own existence. In fact, this is what generally happens. So the typical example is the professor or philosopher who has a shelf full of books and has poured them into his head and is mixing them all around and coming up with this strange brew of what he thinks are his own thoughts, but actually has very little to do with his real experience. It's mostly other people's thoughts that are all chewed up and mixed together and then comes out in some synthetic way.
He's thinking about those theories, but he's not trying to implement them in his experience.
Two things, right. He's not thinking about his own experience, for one thing. It's not phenomenological. It's abstract. And the second thing is, he's not trying to change himself. That's critical. Any meaningful analysis of the Buddha's teaching has to begin from the point of, I have a problem. I'm suffering. I can't change the world, but I can change myself. And where do I have to start from? My own experience. So he goes on to say, sadly, what is often passed off as philosophical education or spiritual training is just this reflection or abstract thinking about one's life. And this is exactly why it has no significant or long-lasting impact on the students. That is, the character and mental attitude of the student are rarely, if ever, altered. So just thinking about stuff isn't going to change anything. Really, all you're doing is taking one set of symbols and substituting another set of symbols for the same thing. The same level of consciousness. You're going round and round the pole, like the dog. Buddha makes the example of a dog attached to a pole by a leash, and the dog is trying to escape. And so he thinks that, well, if I run very fast, then I'll get away. But because he's constrained by the leash, he can only run around and around the pole. You can't really go anywhere. So these people who are mentally speculating about all this abstract stuff are simply going round and around the pole of their individual consciousness. They're stuck in personality.
Yeah.
Yeah. I-making, mind-making, delusion, ignorance, all these things. And they might not want to admit that they're ignorant. But, ignorant of what? They may have so much knowledge in the form of words, but they're ignorant when it comes to experience and how things actually work.
Yeah. They have a filter on their experience, so they aren't really seeing their experience.
That's only the beginning.
Yeah.
Most of the material that they're dealing with actually comes from someone else. It didn't even originate in their own experience.
No.
It originated in someone else's experience.
Yeah. So they pick and choose other people's opinions.
Based on what they think their audience wants to hear. Are they going to be able to publish it? Is it going to be successful? Will they get tenure? Or will they get critical acclaim? Will they be able to make a business of publishing their work, and so on and so forth? All these considerations. I know because I had these myself.
Yeah.
I used to be a professional writer. I know how the game is played.
Yeah. And you can't walk too far outside the box in that game.
No, not at all. No. But the Buddha's teaching is outside the box. It's completely radical.
Yeah.
So he goes on to say, reflexion, with an X, however, is thinking about something while it is at hand. That is, present in one's own experience. Yay. That's phenomenology. Phenomenological means you're staring at the microphone and talking about, this is a microphone, see, here's the volume control, here's the mute button, and so on,
You're not speculating, you're experiencing.
Right. Yeah. You're drawing your material from your immediate experience, and that's why it's comparatively free from error. Because you can't fake it, or you're not faking it. You're going from what's real. So he continues, the Theravada suttas refer to it as sati sampajanya, a compound word formed from sati plus sampajanya. Sati means calling to mind. When the past is being called to mind, sati refers to memory of the past. When the present is being called to mind, then sati refers to mindfulness of the present. In the compound word sati sampajanya, sati concerns the present. Hence, in this usage it refers to mindfulness or general recollectedness, not being scatterbrained.
Recollected.
Recollected.
Like you gather up all the different pieces of yourself.
Yes, right. And you also have some conceptual frame of reference, some consistent way of looking at your experience. You're not just blindly going through life moment to moment, like an animal, or like a very undeveloped human being. You are considering your experience carefully with the aim of building up a framework, a system of analysis. Something that, some consistent way of viewing your experience so that it leads you toward your aim of enlightenment. That's recollection. That's mindfulness. There's so many suttas where it says the Buddha came in and sat down and established mindfulness in front of him.
Mindfulness is like awareness.
It's like awareness, but it's structured awareness. It's not just, plain awareness.
Yeah, it seems to me that the structured awareness that you're talking about is yoniso manasikara, because that's called structured awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
This is, sati sampajana is like preliminary to yoniso manasikara, I think.
Right, because you're...
First you become like focused and aware, and then you start thinking systematically.
Yes, you have to build it up. And everyone has to do this work for themselves. Even though there are books and so on that you can refer to, ultimately you have to parse your own experience and see these things in the present, not in the past. Maybe in the beginning you can think over the past and think, well, in the past I was like this, or in the past I was like that. But ultimately you have to see it while it's happening in order to change it. You can't change the past. And of course the future hasn't happened yet. So the only thing we really have to work with is the present.
So reading the book isn't enough. You have to try what's in the book.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that means you have to apply it to your present experience, not to the past. The nature of the average individual is not to be recollected in mind. This means his mind keeps moving very rapidly from this to that without any effort on his part. James Joyce's novel Ulysses portrays this scatterbrained nature and the futile occupations that fill the typical individual's day in some detail. Have you read it?
I've read parts of it a long time ago.
It's almost unreadable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so scatterbrained, it makes me very uncomfortable to read.
Yeah.
Yeah. It reminds me of when I was a kid, and my mind was just all over the universe.
The author just wrote whatever he thought at the moment.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, cuss words and all.
He was brainstorming while writing the book or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a very uncomfortable book because it's so real. Normally, even to ourselves, we present like an edited version of our experience, of our thinking. Oh yes, I thought about this, and then I thought about that. But actually you thought about this, that, and this other thing, and what the dog is doing, and all the crazy stuff that's happening in your fantasies and stuff like that. In between,
yeah.
The official thoughts.
Yeah. How often do we sit down and concentrate in concentration on one subject for a long time? Only people who have practiced concentration can do that.
Yeah.
Or if it's really interesting subject, you can maybe...
Well, if there's a lot of pleasure involved in it.
Yes.
Yeah. Or if one sees future pleasure coming from it, future benefit.
Like playing a game, for example, computer game sucks you right in and keeps your attention there because it's interesting, a lot of stuff going on.
Well, that's an interesting example, and let's look at that a little bit because so many people are addicted to computer games, and they're designed to addict you. It's quite purposeful.
Yeah.
The way they're put together, and the way they do it is they make you do something that's actually unpleasant now for the prospect of some future gain.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. You have to walk in that world for maybe half an hour and pick up something and walk to another place and drop that thing, and then you get the reward. You get some experience and get an item.
So it's mostly kind of boring.
Yeah, it's mostly kind of boring. It's like walk here and then kill that guy and walk over there and then deliver the thing.
Yeah, so
all the quests are like that.
This is going on not only in computer games, it's going on in life.
Yeah, works like that.
Why do people go to school? School is horrible, it's boring, it's meaningless, it's bullying, it's so many nasty things. But people go to school because they think, well, I'm going to get a good job in the future, right? And then they get out of school and there are no jobs.
And the job would suck anyway.
Right. But wait a minute, there's that paycheck at the end of the week. So people do things, they force themselves to be interested in things that aren't immediately pleasurable if there's some hope of reward in the immediate future. But what he's talking about here is someone who is just kind of rolling through life aimlessly. The Buddha describes this. Monks, just as a monkey journeying along a forest slope catches hold of one branch, having let it go, catches hold of another, having let that go, catches hold of another. Even so, monks, this thing called thinking, called mind, called knowing, springs up as one thing and ceases as another, day and night.
Wow.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And it's always like that. That's what the monkey mind does. Like you can impose some kind of intention in your life, but still day-to-day operations is like that.
Yeah.
For the untrained mind.
Because the mind associates. It takes this and then it reminds the mind of that. And so then it takes up that.
Yes.
And then that reminds it of something else, and then it takes up that thing, and so on.
Yeah, I noticed that the other day when I was...
You start off sitting down to meditate, and you wind up thinking about the cream cheese sandwich you had 3 years ago for lunch. There's just no system to the mind, no rational system.
No, it's by association.
So he goes on, to understand something, the mind must concentrate on it. And to concentrate, it must get recollected. Sampajanya means awareness. And awareness should not be mistaken for consciousness or comprehension.
Awareness is the function of consciousness, I read.
Yes. Awareness means keeping oneself under constant observation with a recollected mind. So that one's thoughts, words, and actions do not pass unnoticed or unobserved. Instead of simply experiencing our experience, we observe our experience, which requires a level of abstraction. Okay? It requires a recollectedness, a certain system of looking at things, of classifying things. That, okay, now my mind is concentrated. Now I am focused on this subject matter. Oops, now it's trying to jump away to some other thing. Now I'm bringing it back. Now I'm again concentrating on my subject. Now I'm making some progress in understanding. See? So understanding is only possible with a mind that is recollected, in which one is conscious of being conscious, experiencing one's experience. There's the level of abstraction, and this is what he's calling reflection, with an X. Reflection. One observes that a feeling has arisen, that it persists, and that it passes away. Likewise, feelings, perceptions, intentions, etc. are to be known as they arise, endure, and vanish. While awareness is not too different from mindfulness, its meaning is more specialized. Awareness is a specialized aspect of the more general phenomenon of mindfulness. It is a particular mode of recollection. And then the Buddha explains it. And again, monks. A monk in going forward and going back, he is aware. In looking straight on and looking elsewhere, he is aware. In bending and stretching, he is aware. In carrying his outer cloak, alms bowl, and robe, he is aware. In eating, drinking, chewing, and savoring, he is aware. In excreting and urinating, he is aware. In walking, standing, sitting, sleeping, waking, speaking, and being silent, he is aware. Thus he abides in the body internally. His mindfulness that there is a body is established in him to the extent necessary for knowledge and mindfulness. I really like that phrase, to the extent necessary. In other words, his mindfulness of his body is not a comprehensive or complete or obsessive awareness of the body. It's only enough awareness of the body so that he can cultivate knowledge and mindfulness. In other words, if the body is, let's say, out of structure, in an awkward position or something like that.
He's aware of that immediately.
He's aware immediately. But he's not aware to the extent that he knows the position of each muscle and each thing. See, it's enough knowledge of the body to maintain mindfulness. It's just like the Buddha's teaching is enough knowledge to attain the cessation of suffering. It's not meant to be a complete cosmological or metaphysical system. That's not the intention at all. And sometimes these scholars try to make it into that.
That's slandering the Buddha.
It is. It's saying something that the Buddha didn't say. It's just like people who try to say that the Buddha has a strategy or that the Buddha has a metaphysics, or they try to speculate some system.
Unless you're a Buddha, you don't know what the Buddha has.
That's very good. Very good insight. Thank you. That's wonderful. Thus, the compound sati sampajanya would signify mindfulness and awareness. Note that the Buddha's teaching should be carried out in a state of sati sampajanya. So in other words, we should be recollected in mind, not that we simply go through the motions. There are people who are going through the motions, who have learned, we see this every day, people who have learned all the chants, they know when to bow down, they know when to do this and that and ring the bell and whatever.
But they're bored.
They're totally bored. Why? Because they're not mindful. They're going through the motions. Some of the young monks in particular. They've been to school. They know all the chants. They got it down. And they're bored. Means they're not mindful. Of course, the kind of mindfulness implied by sati is right mindfulness, as taught by the Buddha in the Noble Eightfold Path. So you can be mindful, but you can be mindful in a wrong way. You could be mindful thinking of something far away, or in the past.
Mindful rascal.
Yeah. Rascal mindfulness is present all the time. You know, we learned it in school. You sit there at your desk and your mind is a million miles away. So these are all the kinds of things that we have to overcome to really make progress on the Eightfold Path. Right mindfulness is just one. But he's talking about this for a reason. He's trying to introduce a particular state of mindfulness that's going to be useful to us to understand the Buddha's teaching and to realize the result of that teaching. So he goes on. Thus, there are two classes of mental states or conditions. The normal, quote-unquote, condition of the average individual, described in the suttas as mindfulness forgotten, unaware, not recollected, scatterbrained, senses uncontrolled. And the condition necessary for understanding the Buddha's teaching, described as mindfulness set up, aware, recollected, attention one-pointed, senses controlled. That almost sounds like a checklist, like a military procedure for taking off an airplane or something. Mindfulness set up. Huh?
Yeah, just reading that, you almost become like that.
It's beautiful. Yeah. I'm going to read it again. Mindfulness set up, check. Aware, check. Recollected, check. Attention one-pointed, check. Senses uncontrolled. Oops. No, better control those senses. Okay, check. Yeah. That you have to go through this process of setting up a certain mindfulness, a certain consciousness, before inquiring into the Buddha's teaching is going to do you any good.
Yeah. In the beginning, your mind is like used to going here and there, so you have to pick it back into your attention back into yourself so many times until it calms down.
Yeah, it's a discipline. Just like any discipline, you're going to make some mistakes, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, the training in mindfulness is there in like the temple procedures and stuff like that. That's all just training in mindfulness.
Yeah.
It really has the rituals and all that stuff and the bowing and all that stuff. It really has no meaning outside of training in mindfulness. Oh, now it's this time I'm supposed to do this. Right? To be aware of the situation and to know what's coming is also part of mindfulness. To be aware that, oh, if I do this, then this has consequences in the future. That's mindfulness. So, just as there can be right reflection with a C and wrong reflection, there can be right reflexion with an X and wrong reflexion. In other words, we could be reflecting on the wrong things, or we could be reflecting in the wrong way. We could be reflecting on something that has no bearing on our actual benefit. But reflexion, with an X, has two advantages over reflection, with a C. One, mistakes are automatically minimized. Two, there is always direct contact with the actual. Right reflection, or mindfulness and awareness, sati sampajanya, has further advantages. Oh, just before we go on. So now he has made sati sampajanya the meaning of right reflexion, with an X. So when we say reflexion or reflexive consciousness or reflexive awareness or something like that, it's referring to this term, sati sampajanya, right mindfulness with recollectedness. So this has further advantages. One, it leads to knowledge and seeing. Jnana dasana. Jnana dasana. Jnana means knowledge. Dasana means seeing. Two, it leads to calm and tranquility. Samatha.
Also called concentration.
Concentration. You have to be calm. Hence, it's a more pleasant state. This concentration is a very pleasing state. It's intrinsically pleasing all by itself.
Suffering is the jumping around of the mind.
Well, that's one aspect of suffering, Yeah, it's disturbing when the mind is always running here and there, interrupting our train of thought and feeling. But it is also a more difficult type of mental application, demanding more deliberate effort and skill. Why? Because you have to remain in the present. You can't wander in the past and future. And you have to be looking at things analytically, analyzing, observing your experience and analyzing it in a particular way. And if you do this, then the benefits start to come. You get knowledge and seeing, jnana. However, sati sampajanya is precisely the type of thinking required to solve the problem of one's own existence, thus assuring one's spiritual welfare. So in other words, we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. We're suffering. We don't know who we are or what we are. And as soon as we try to find out, the answer seems to slip away from our fingers. This is the existential ambiguity that he talks about. We think that we are, I am. He brings up Descartes' famous statement, I think, therefore I am. Well, I think I am, anyway. But as soon as I try to grab hold of this thinking, or this mind, or this I, then...
How long can you hold on to one thought?
Precisely.
Not long.
No. So, the level of thought involved in reflexive consciousness, or self-observation, is actually more stable, more long-lasting. The state of mind of concentration, if done properly, with one's own experience as the object of concentration, can last indefinitely. Because even the thoughts coming and going in the mind don't disturb it.
No.
They become food for self-observation. And this leads to peace. A kind of peace that's not available by direct experience. It's only available by reflexion, with an X.
Observing the direct experience.
Right. A level of abstraction, a superstructure, as he calls it later on. A superstructure over our immediate experience.
And that superstructure takes the place of the superstructure of the I and mind.
Well, it will eventually. In the beginning, it's still going to be suffused with a feeling of I and mine. This is I observing my experience. But the more that you observe your experience, the more you see that there's nothing you can really call I.
No.
And mine is simply an arbitrary designation that we apply to the things that are present. And that's how we actually create our I. But now I'm getting ahead of us. We're getting... This is farther ahead. We're trying to create now the foundation for that level of awareness.
Sneak peek into the future here.
Yeah, right. A little preview, right? So, any experience that has any degree of mindfulness has two important fundamental parts. One, immediate experience. For example, when we make the outside world the object of our experience. Two, reflexive experience, when we make the immediate experience the object of our experience. So that's what I was just talking about. The level of peace or concentration available when you're simply experiencing is not very good, because the mind is going to lead you here and there. But the level of concentration when you're observing your experience is much higher, because the mind is then more stable. It has a center of function that is immune, or at least should be, if your mind is well trained, it should be immune to the changes in the mind and attention. So your attention can go from the eyes to the ears to smells to the bodily feelings, or you can think of a mental impression or a memory or something like that, but still not disturb the process of self-observation.
Yeah, it's like you're creating a space where all that stuff shows up.
Exactly. That's a very good way to say it. Yeah, thanks, Werner.
Yes, that's a nice way to hold it also when you're practicing.
Yeah.
Like you're creating a space and then this stuff shows up in your space, but you're always focusing on the space.
Yeah, it's like the difference between experiencing something directly and having it show up on a TV screen. When it shows up on the TV screen, it's in a context. When you experience directly, the experience is the context.
Yeah. You are that and you have all that stuff. But when you observe it, it's like you become aware that maybe it isn't you or yours.
Yeah, you could look at it as recontextualizing your experience in such a way that it doesn't produce the disturbance, the agitation, the continual flux and change.
And you start to loosen the I and mind.
Yeah, it starts. It's a little bit. We have to introduce that level of abstraction.
Yes.
So, he goes on, thus, when we perceive a perception, the perception itself is immediate experience. The observation of the immediate experience is the reflexive experience. In other words, reflexive experience is the experience of experience, or being aware of being aware.
Like you see something and then you say, seeing.
Yeah. That's one technique that's used in meditation. That's really the most important part of this chapter. He's defining reflexive experience as a level of experience including self-observation. It's a little more abstract than our ordinary experience. It's a little more advanced. It can bring us to a whole new level of peace and mental pleasure, because of our concentration can be sustained beyond the usual limits of the rascal mind, the monkey mind, jumping from this to that.
And we can see so many new aspects of our experience, both inside ourselves and also in the external world, when we stop judging our experience.
Yeah, that we don't think this is good, this is bad, I don't care about this other thing.
Yeah, and you're communicating where you're thinking about what you're going to say next, normally.
No, instead you just watch yourself communicating.
Yeah, and listen authentically.
Yeah.
Maybe even.
Yeah, well, it leads in that direction. These are all things that are based on this foundation, which is really what we want to call phenomenological or experience-based awareness, rather than thought-based awareness or memory-based awareness, where we're more aware of memories and thoughts than we are of our immediate experience. If our experience, our awareness, is focused on our immediate experience, we have the advantage that we always remain in contact, we always remain in touch with something real, something concrete. If we get into thoughts about thoughts,
and a bunch of stuff happened, we missed everything.
we can not only, we miss things, but we can easily make errors.
Yeah.
Because who knows whether those thoughts are correct. Even our memories, are notoriously unreliable. So how can we solve the problem of life? How can we solve the problem of suffering?
Not by thinking about it.
Right. We have to change.
Yeah.
And the foundation of this process of change is this phenomenological experience or reflexive experience. So I'm going to end off here.
Okay.